scene 20 in my version of King Lear is Act 4, Scene 6 if you're looking at the folio version. This is that very long scene where Edgar, disguised as poor Tom, the beggar, leads Gloucester to Dover, so that, you know, Gloucester believes that he's jumping off a cliff to kill himself, and Edgar engineers the whole situation so that Gloucester believes that he has done that, but has been spared by some miracle, to try and give him some sort of purpose to his life, I guess. And we get sort of towards the, well, around about line 8, Gloucester's sort of doubting Edgar basically. He's met him thinking he's poor Tom. And we get the idea that the emotion or something is starting to get to Edgar, and he's starting to give himself away basically. He's starting to speak in his normal voice. And Gloucester says, you know, you speak with better phrase and manner than thou didst. In other words, you're speaking more like a gentleman than you used to. Edgar replies around about line 8, says, you're much deceived, in nothing am I changed but in my garments. And there's that irony in this scene throughout, you know, that's the same as throughout the play really, that Edgar is entirely changed in terms of being disguised, but he's also not changed at all in the sense that he's still loyal. And it's that point that Shakespeare is stressing throughout this play, and certainly throughout this scene, that Edgar has the loyalty to the older world, but he's able to adapt in a way that the older characters aren't able to do that. Edgar, you know, sort of gestures towards us around about line 34. He speaks aside to the audience, so again we're sort of on a level with Edgar at this point. We're really empathising with him. He says, why I do trifle thus with his despair, he's done to cure it. And again, over those two lines we see that irony again, that Edgar is playing on Gloucester's emotions, he's manipulating him in some ways. It's incredibly Machiavellian in some ways. But then the second line, it's done to cure it. Edgar ultimately is the cure. We've had all that imagery of infection and of plague. Edgar, quite obviously, is the cure. But he does it through being a little bit Machiavellian, being able to cope with the new world. And that's shown again around about line 53, 54. Gloucester jumps, obviously he's not on a cliff at all, just on a slight ledge, and then Edgar runs around pretending there to be somebody else and says to him, 10 masts a length make not the altitude which thou wast perpendicularly fell, thy life's a miracle, speak yet again. He pretends to be somebody basically on Dover Beach who says, this is a miracle, you've been saved. And that really goes against any religious reading to this play that we might have. Edgar is using religion entirely to his own ends as a way of manipulating Gloucester to get him to see the value of his life. And that's that problematic nature of religion in the play. A religious reading doesn't really work. Cordelia, the character who's most like the Virgin Mary, is killed. Edgar's able to sort of take religion and use it to his own ends, but the ends are sort of seen as justifying the means here. So it's not a play where we've got a simple answer here in terms of how far a religious reading works. There's a slightly odd line about line 72 where Edgar says, therefore thou happy father, think that the clearest gods who made their honours of men's impossibilities have preserved thee. He's using father there as a term of endearment to an older man. It would be a common term of endearment that you say father, like the fool says nuncle to Lear. He sees him as like an uncle figure. So Edgar's not giving himself away there, but again there's that irony that he actually is calling his dad father. So again he's being honest in deception, he's disguised, but then there's that honesty still coming through. That's contrasted with Lear's sort of blind rage around about line 95. He says, ha Goneril, ha Regan, they flatter me like a dog and told me I had white hairs in my beard, ere the black ones were there. In other words, Lear's saying that they flattered me and basically made me old before my time. They told me that I was an old man who needed to give up my kingdom when I wasn't quite. And on the one hand, he's seeing where he's been fooled here. He's seeing through Goneril and Regan, but equally he's not accepting his own weakness and his own age at that point. You know, he's an old man. He's failing. He's got to be on the way out. So again, he's coming to some realisation, but it's not that realisation that Edgar's got where he's able to adapt. And Lear says as much about line 103. He says, I am not ague-proof at the end of his speech. Ague means not immune to shivering. He's not, he's not immune to the cold. But I think there is that pun used by Shakespeare. It sounds very much like I am not age-proof. And I think that is a very, very, apt phrase when Lear's just said, oh, they told me my beard was white before it, while it was still black. Actually, no, Lear isn't age-proof. Lear is aging. Lear has got a big white beard. Lear is past it. Lear does need to move on here. And I think Shakespeare's stressing that he hasn't quite got that realisation yet. That's why Gloucester and Lear ultimately at the end have to go to allow Edgar and Albany to sort of come through these much more milky, much more, feminine and adaptable characters. Lear gestures towards this again, 111. He says, let copulation thrive, for Gloucester's bastard son was kinder to his father than my daughters. In other words, who can say that having children out of wedlock is a bad thing when Gloucester was treated much better by his bastard son Edmund than by his legitimate son? Again, Lear's still not seeing the truth, is he? By the very nature of saying he's bastard son, he's making point here that Edmund is unnatural, and that ties in with that unnatural imagery that's linked with Edmund throughout. Then we get a great little interplay about line 126, 127. Gloucester says, oh, let me kiss that hand. He recognises Lear and wants to kiss his hand. He sees him as the king. Lear replies with, here, wipe it first. It smells of mortality. That great scene between the two old men. Gloucester's blind trust and blind faith in a king who he believes, is God on earth, basically. Let me kiss that hand because it's anointed, it's holy. But then Lear, actually it smells of mortality. It's that great moment where you get the respect for the old system that is intrinsically linked to death and aging. It's out of date, it doesn't work. And Gloucester says that just afterwards, oh, ruined piece of nature, this great world should so wear out to naught. Again, you get the imagery of the world turning, like the Wheel of Fortune, and that idea basically that nature has turned against Lear. Nature is not on his side. He's too old. He just need to go. And then there's a great line about 144. Gloucester says, I see it feelingly. And I talked about as soon as Gloucester is blinded, he then sees through Edmund. He then sees the truth that Edmund has betrayed him. And I think that is part of this same point that Shakespeare makes here. It's only when Gloucester's blinded that he's able to actually see, because he doesn't see now with his eyes, he sees with his emotions. He's seeing in a way that he's not seen before. And Lear makes reference to that bit 159, robes and furred gowns hides all. Yeah? Now that Lear's naked, he can see the truth. The two old men are mirrored here. Gloucester, who's blind but now can see, Lear, who's naked but now can sort of see the truth much more clearly than he ever could before. Edgar notices it about line 164, reason in madness. Again, it's that irony, isn't it? That through the madness, actually, there's an element of reason that these men have got that they never had before. Lear mentions about line 167, we came crying hither, thou knowest the first time that we smell the air, we wail and cry. He's basically weeping to the skies. Again, he's linked to a child. He's saying basically, I entered this world crying naked like a child. Now he's this old man, getting ready to leave it. And that's what Act 4 is all about, setting up this end where these old patriarchs need to die, really. He carries on, he removes his crown of weeds, and he says, when we're born, we cry that we are come to this great stage of fools. Shakespeare often links life with the stage and with the play, but the irony here is that Lear still hasn't seen through Edmund, who he has just called the bastard, who he doesn't really see as being this Machiavellian character that he clearly is. Gloucester we see has seen some value in his life, about line 208, let not my worst spirit tempt me again to die before you please. He's basically saying, okay, I trust now, I trust that I'll die at the right moment. And that sets up Gloucester's sort of, understanding here, and Shakespeare stresses it. At the end of the play, Gloucester dies because it's almost his time. It's time for these old patriarchs to die, and I think Shakespeare's suggesting that Gloucester accepts it, but it's on somebody else's terms. It can't be on the terms of Lear and Gloucester. They can't just go when they please. Lear tries to do that with his crown, and it causes all sorts of problems. Then Oswald comes in. Remember, Oswald's a very loyal servant to Goneril, but ultimately evil. And again, Shakespeare's showing how Edgar's loyalty is probably better because it's a bit more adaptable, it's a bit more realistic. And he says about line 225, dost thou support a published traitor, hence let the infection of his fortune take like hold on thee. Okay, he's comparing these old men basically to infections. It's the irony, of course, that really it's the Machiavellian younger characters who are this infection that's taking over the world. Edgar says about line 246, sit you down, father. Great moment. So literally Gloucester lowers himself down, he is lower. Edgar is higher, and Edgar rises actually as we go through the play. I think that's part of that idea as we get towards the end of Act 4, that now Edgar's almost taken his dad's place, he's ready now, but he's not going to make the same mistakes, he's adaptable enough to cope with it. And then they read Goneril's letter about line 260-ish, where she says, I am the prisoner and his bed my jail, from the low of the warmth whereof deliver me and supply the place for your labour. Basically, it's quite a crude reference to Goneril saying that she lusts after Edmund, so it would be seen as very unnatural at the time, this reference to female sexuality. But also there's that great moment that now it's the letters of Goneril and Edmund that are used against them. You know, whereas that was used against Edgar, now it's used against them. So again, it echoes what's come before, as we see that Edgar's completing that transformation from loyal but ultimately naive patriarch to a much more adaptable character who can cope and is maybe the cure against this infection.